And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for Friday morning, showing a band of IFR here moving across the eastern Arctic coast, trailing back into the Central Brooks Range there, and a little bit more here along the west coast. Otherwise, good VFR, western interior, central interior as well, into the Copper River Basin, and out to the northern Bering Sea here. And a big area of IFR, central Bering Sea, down to the north side of the eastern Aleutians Alaska Peninsula, extending out to Adak, all the way out to the Komodorskis, and another patch of IFR here for the North Gulf Coast in toward Prince William Sound, and marginal for the Panhandle. For the afternoon, areas of marginal VFR along the Alaska Range at Talkeetna becomes more extensive as you get down into Prince William Sound and the Gulf, and mostly marginal for the southeast coast, and mostly VFR for the interior. A little more in the way of marginal VFR for the western Brooks Range and North Slope, but the Arctic coast there improving to VFR, and IFR here over the northern eastern Bering Sea to the Pribilofs, almost into Nunivak Island there, and areas of IFR down over the western Aleutians. And for the morning, Saturday, IFR coming into the southwest coast here, all the way down to about Togiak and the Auckland Mountains, covering the northern Bering Sea. Another area of IFR roughly from just west of Nikolsky on out to Kiska Island, Amchitka, those areas. And IFR up there along the central Arctic coast with another disturbance swinging eastward there. And some IFR left over up along the North Gulf Coast here, northeast Prince William Sound. Good in the interior. Again, some marginal VFR areas of the Alaska Range, mostly in the central Alaska Range there. And then IFR, Eastern Panhandle, marginal VFR for the central inside waters to the outer coast. And for the afternoon, stays pretty marginal for the southeast coast, and some VFR now showing up in the Gulf of Alaska into Prince William Sound, and marginal VFR in the afternoon over the mountainous terrain of the North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula. Good VFR in the interior here, marginal for the North Slope and Arctic coast, and less IFR out over the Bering Sea here. You can see a much smaller area over the northern Bering and a little bit there along the south side of the Alaska Peninsula. Otherwise, marginal VFR improving as you get head west to Shemya. And for passes for Friday, Anaktuvik, IFR becoming marginal IFR early on for both Anaktuvik and Adigan, but improving to marginal VFR for most of the day. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, occasional marginal VFR for Friday, occasionally marginal for rainy, windy. Isabel, occasionally marginal. Mentasta, though, should be VFR. VFR for Tanita, Portage, marginal, and marginal VFR also for Chilkoot and White. And for the freezing levels, about 2,000 to 4,000 feet here over the east and northeast interior. Otherwise, either side of 2,000 feet over the remainder of Alaska and the southeast coast, and then back up around 4,000 feet out here to the west. And for icing, with that system coming down out of the Russian Far East here, we've got an area of considerable moderate rime icing possible here for the western Seward Peninsula, all the way down across St. Lawrence Island into the northern Bering Sea, and another smaller patch there sitting just north of the western Aleutians. And for the eastern interior here, actually the central part of the state, could be some areas of very isolated moderate icing here, kind of a broader area as you head south in toward the North Gulf Coast and the southeast coast. Looks like considerable moderate rime icing, a pretty good possibility for Friday. And then for the jet stream here, the strongest jet just cutting across the southern panhandle there out of the southwest with 125 knots blowing into British Columbia. Light over the Gulf, couple of lows out in this area. Light in the interior, 65 knot southwesterlies over the northern Bering Sea. But the stronger northerly winds coming down here on the backside of this low southwest of St. Lawrence Island, up to 130 knots, but diminishing and kind of diverging here over the southwest Bering Sea. And for 9,000 feet, significant low here southwest of St. Lawrence Island area. Good northerly winds behind that, swinging around out of the west at 50 knots here, and then southwest 35 knots just off the southwest coast. And south to southwest winds, central interior here from the north slope down to northern, around the Talkeetna Mountains or so, south central Alaska, anywhere from 35 to 40 knots. And pretty windy conditions, 35 to 45 knot winds, central and southern southeast coast with that low. And for 3,000 feet, strongest winds here at this elevation down to the south of the Panhandle, some of that curving back up along this low here, maybe at 35 to 40 knots or so. Light over the interior into the Gulf of Alaska, strongest winds up on the eastern Arctic coast, remaining off the coastline there and up in the Arctic Ocean. Then a big low out here to the west. We've got pretty good westerlies, 40 to 50 knots, coming right across the Pribilof Islands, taking a turn to the north here, grazing the Yukon Delta coast, and right over Nunivak Island to St. Lawrence Island. And from there, looking at turbulence, a chance of considerable moderate turbulence here, right along the Yukon Delta coast to Nunivak Island, back up towards St. Lawrence Island, with isolated moderate all the way down to the Pribilof Islands, and could be some isolated moderate mechanical turbulence here along the Alaska Range into the Talkeetnas, and moderate turbulence, at least considerable moderate, pretty good possibility of that here for the southern Panhandle.